Welcome back to Tartarian Tales number 75. We keep on pushing through, and the whole Tartarian community and scene just keeps on evolving. And so this time, I wanted to provide a source from the website ForgottenBooks.org. Amazing site that I used to go to all the time. I haven't been going there in years, but I just decided to check, give a little search for Tartaria, Tartary, and all that stuff, and see what books they had. They had a lot on tartaric acid, but they did have a nice one that I'm going to share with you today. And I also just wanted to say congratulations, because now we're being mentioned on InfoWars, and they're mentioning a lot of the good things and putting a lot of questions out there that people have not been thinking of in a very long time. So that is a good sign. We are making progress. We are spreading the word. Awareness is the main key. Once everyone becomes aware, then the physical part can shift into some action. It's only a matter of time now before we have people demanding to know answers to these questions that are so obvious and that they've been so duped on so much for so long, in generations. So, wow, there's a lot of work to do again, but let's keep it going. And I think that, while they have probably most of the important historical accounts in sealed off selections, private collections, Vatican libraries, Smithsonian's, God knows there's probably some more that we don't even know about that have collections and stockpiles of things and artifacts and treasures. So you never know what we're going to find, but we're piecing it together. The more books, the more everything we find, the more our vision becomes comprehensive, and we have just a full idea of what it was like during these times and what they aren't telling us. One thing I find very interesting, and I'll probably do a video specifically on it, is that I find it kind of funny that nowadays, when we think about the past, like modern education, we're taught that the past is garbage and that they were primitive and that they just basically, we came from a lot of stuff and it's been gradually building upwards to the tech we have today. But then in the past, you see a lot of accounts of these books where people constantly are talking about the ancient world as if it were way more advanced, way better, way more powerful, way more advanced in every way. And so it's kind of interesting how that switched at one point. They did but either way, this is going to be an episode on the Palace of the Khan, the interior of palace, the harem, and very interesting aspects of the reality encased within all of this situation. So, very cool book. I recommend it. The Krim Giray, the Krim Tartary, and a lot of interesting, cool things from mid-1800s. Very cool book. A lot of good detail. It's time to check it out. Here we go. So I didn't have the screenshots, so this is just a little scroll down. Feel free to read it on your own, or you can read it with me and check out some pics. So, here we go. Chapter 5. The Palace of the Khan. Goals had an opportunity on his return of wandering through the palace and of allowing his astonished and admiring gaze to rest on objects past which he had hurried when he entered. In the background of the entrance hall, two doors attracted his attention, one of which his guide informed him led into a small mosque, the other to the Divan of Justice, which Mustafa proposed to him to visit. He beheld a long and magnificently adorned saloon, on the lofty ceiling of which were painted in the most brilliant colors groups and figures of all sorts, wonderfully arranged, while gilt and carved work of the most varied forms glittered on the walls. So I find that very interesting, because that's just like what the Vatican and all those amazingly elaborate few buildings that remained look like. So it's like all these palaces, these huge buildings at one point, the glorious ones that are massive tourist attractions nowadays, were everywhere at one point. And someone had to make those. Some civilization of architects had to make those, and creators. So much they're not telling us. Again, an example of the past being so much better than the present, and that weird little thing. And not the case now, where they think the past is, again, dumb and the future is smart and everything's so smart. But again, more proof that it was amazing in the past, and they knew stuff that we can't even fathom, and were capable of creating things that we can't even come close to. So here we go. The light of day penetrated in somber tints through a double row of stained glass windows, which ranged on one side of the saloon only. Over the principal entrance, a small barred gallery, opposite a richly adorned canopy which surmounted the throne, attracted attention on account of its mysterious appearance. That would be beautiful to see. Goals learned from his admirable cicerone, the accomplished barber, that the Khan frequented it secretly when he wished unseen to witness the mode of doing justice practiced by his judges. Mustafa remarked with his arch smile that causes were more likely to be impartially judged because the Khan reached the gallery by a private staircase in the wall, and the judges were uncertain whether he were present or not. Smart. The barber, who on this occasion gave full play to his love of talking, told him, amongst other things, how ladies were able to assist at trials, which interested them without being seen. The fair inhabitants of the harem were invited on certain days that they might sometimes see other human faces as well as their own. This says a great deal for our Khan's liberal principles, said Mustafa, but I must add that the charming ladies are kept in sight by a young and beardless slave who is charged to watch their beaming glances. If it appear to him that one of them fixes her gaze too intently on any of the male forms in the hall, he calls out in shrill tones, and the whole flock disappear quick as lightning. Sighing, scolding, and laughing, they trip downstairs, followed by their guardian, who must reconduct them to the gate of the harem. Mustafa Aga was himself so much amused with this description that he laughed long and loud over it. The Prussian lieutenant, of course, failed not to ask many questions concerning the external and internal arrangement of the harem. Mustafa Aga, with a significant shrug of his shoulders, laid his finger on his lips and pointed out to him a small door, scarcely perceptible in the distance, and he said it opened into a long corridor which connected the palace with the harem and led to the Valley of Roses. The barber, however, left it doubtful whether this name, which was given to the harem, had its origin in the beauty of its inhabitants or in the mass of roses that grew in the spot, which he represented to Goals as a perfect paradise, whose voluptuous silence was only interrupted by the gentle rippling of the waters and the sweet voice of the nightingale. This guy's got some great descriptions. I like this book. I definitely recommend the rest of it, so let's keep going now. Mustafa lowered his voice in so mysterious a manner while talking of these beauties that Goals felt almost inclined to laugh. They then traversed other courts, in all of which they were greeted by the sparkling rays from innumerable fountains whose fresh waters took their rise in the surrounding mountains. Then they reached a court in which the military spectacles and exercises took place. I just had a random thought. It is interesting how the waters come from mountains a lot of the time, and I wonder if that has to do with something about what they once were, or what they, if we're missing something there when we see that aspect of our world. Maybe there's something connecting that. But here we go. Then they reached a court in which the military spectacles and exercises took place, on one side of which was a high tower with a trellised terrace, whence the wives of the Khan could often, as spectators, enjoy the sports got up by his guards or by the comedians and jesters in his pay. Goals was invited by his guide to mount the tower, from which, to his great delight, the whole of the palace, with the labyrinth of courts, gardens, and buildings contained within its walls, presented itself to his astonished view. Beyond this wonderful panorama, Gold saw lying before him the whole town of Bakshi Sarai, built in the form of a cone on a picturesquely grouped chain of mountains. It was indeed an enchanting picture of infinite variety which spread itself before him, calculated to produce a cheerful effect on the mind of the beholder. Interesting. Again, the architects. The ancients were architects at one point. They were creators. This is the only way they could have built such a place, carved such a place out of the mold of earth. The barber, who, with his kind care for Goals, wished, if possible, to show him everything, next led him to the other side of the palace, where behind a mosque from which the dervishes were with solemn, melancholy notes announcing the hour of prayer, lay the burial ground dedicated to the family of the Khans. From this cheerful spot, adorned with fragrant shrubs and intersected by a murmuring rivulet, the terrors of death were entirely banished, and it only recalled peaceful reminiscences of the great and glorious race of heroes who slept therein. Again, the past, great and glorious. And then they tell us now that the past was racist and evil and patriarchy. Ugh. Two large octangular mausoleums with lofty projecting iron cupolas presented themselves as the places of interment of the ancient sovereign house of the Giray. This family, descended from a Mongol prince, Haji Giray, was considered to be an offshoot of the house of Genghis Khan. It was able to trace its descent from high and illustrious antiquity, again, and had for a long time stamped the history of the Tauric Chersonese with the character of a powerful opposition and successful resistance to the might of Russia. God, these little tiny things I wish they would elaborate on like crazy, but they just tease us. Around these mausoleums lay numerous princes and princesses of the house, either in stone monuments or wooden coffins, hung round with the green or black stuffs. The tombs of the men were surmounted by woolen turbans, and were thus distinguished from those of the ladies, which were devoid of all ornament. Beyond the mausoleums, a number of tombs of different epochs, which by their character and dilapidated condition bore testimony to their extreme antiquity, were scattered about among the bushes and over the spacious extent of this burial ground, together with marble blocks with partly effaced inscriptions, which appeared to have been separated from the graves of the person whose names and praises they recorded. Again, just a sign of something phenomenal in the past, and a sign of resets as well, as the names and inscriptions get defaced and erased and moved and shifted. Just the past brilliance just slightly gets diminished every time that happens, and the history and the story gets slightly lost with every generation, and we got to preserve it and use our imaginations. Here we go. Names and praises they recorded. Other tombs adorned with carpets and hangings from cashmere testified by the ever-burning lamps to the pious care with which they were watched over, and the great historic names engraved on them in letters of gold claimed respect that could not be refused. Mustafa Aga read to gold some of these Tartar inscriptions with a genuine religious and devotional solemnity, and translated them with historical illustrations, which proved how well acquainted he was with the legends of his fatherland. And I am not sure if there is another page there, because the next page is only for paying members only, which I am not. So someone's got to find this book. I think that's kind of the end of the chapter. That's why I picked that one. But there might be a little more there about the fatherland, the ancient stuff, these stories. The only way at some point is what it seems like from all these tales that I've read is that, again, antiquity was masterful. It was something heroic. It was something grand. It was something massive. It was something that just like was so big that its remnants just lingered in the subconscious and the psyche of people for generations to come. They wrote about it. It was like a time of lore and a time of just, it almost appeared to be a golden age to them, as if they knew something happened at some point, and all these different just dissipations of reality and truth and history just kind of kept flowing and kept coming and kept bombarding everyone. So only a few people remained to tell these stories and preserve these stories, and most of them probably didn't write books. Most of them just were oral tales that lingered and were most likely lost or remembered by some people. Some author, encounters these people as they're traveling, and then they mention something about it, but you get the memory of it. You get kind of a little triggered DNA collective memory response, but nothing really positive, so nothing really extreme that will change the game for us, which is what we're all looking for. And I hope we find it. I never know. It might be in one of these books that I've got here. It might be in more that exist somewhere, and it most likely is in some forbidden zone in the library somewhere under the protection of someone who we need to break through and discover and release to the public all of these things, whether it's the Tibetan ancient library, the Vatican, the Smithsonian. All this stuff needs to be released. We need someone in power that's like, you know what? this is what's going to happen now, and it's time to disclose everything, because all the people that started those companies are long gone. So what is with the need to keep that kind of secrecy going? All those people that originally came up with the intent of being secret about all this stuff are gone. It's time for a new world to discover what the old world was like, and maybe we can bring it back. Either way, I'm convinced we just have to get beyond the poles. And maybe there's another civilization just chomping at the bits, just like us, to meet us as we are to meet them. So, they could be slaves out there, they could be free, they could be something completely that we don't even know. Gods, giants, the architects could be out there being like, I wonder what these guys are going to do to our spot. Let's kind of just watch them with our shooting star cameras and other things. But who knows? That's going down some tangents. There is no telling, though, which tangent is going to be accurate, because when you look at the past, anything is possible. I mean, whether it's Vimanas and ancient Hindu tech, whether it's the moving of the Temple of Jupiter and those giant blocks, of the underground caverns and temples and cities and catacombs that are stretched for thousands and thousands of miles underneath all of us. The fact that they keep uncovering temple after temple. They find holes in the middle of canyons. We both have a Grand Canyon over here, and there's many over in Asia, in Africa, in Europe that look exactly the same. There's so many different things adding up from all different directions, bombarding us, and we just got to keep on digging, and we have to inevitably find the link in the main source of information, the wellspring, the fountain that just is a treasure trove that just makes all of our ideas, all of our imaginations, all of the things we're trying to rack our brains to figure out how this could happen. It makes sense of all of them, and I think it would be amazing. Imagine if we were to see pictures of what these looked like in this same cliff right here as a massive building, a massive tower, an elaborate cathedral, a massive structure, a power, or nuclear, or some form of etheric power generator, who knows, a lab, I don't know what it is, a sports event, a tower, a game, of anything, a playground. Could be anything for these ancient architects. But if we were to see a glimpse of what their creation, their original creation looked like, and we would be able to figure out a lot about ourselves, this world, reality, and everything else. So let's keep on questioning, keep on digging, and I hope you enjoyed this. Keep reading further into the book. I think you will like a lot of the other chapters as well. Again, very descriptive. This author is very cool. So enjoy. Check the link below. Add your insight in the comments, and bless you all.